Good afternoon and welcome to Network 10's coverage of the 1985 Japan Cup, one of the truly international events on the racing calendar. And this year it's no exception, and once again Australasia has a strong representative, and that is Spirit of Kingston from Australia and also the Filbert from New Zealand. And we're all hoping that Spirit of Kingston can return to the form she displayed earlier this year and late last season. She won the Oak Stakes, of course, at Flemington, and she was the best staying filly in Australia. She went on to win the Canterbury Guineas and also the Rosehill Guineas, and more than $440,000 in prize money. Trained by Bob Hoisted and ridden by Gary Willits, who's won 99 group or listed races, and he's going for his 100th today. And of course from New Zealand, that hardy gallop of the Filbert. He suffered from colic earlier this week in Japan. He's made a rapid recovery, and we've seen him in Australia twice now. He won during the 1984 season and was most consistent in the big races this year. Let's have a look at the rundown on the field. Nazir Paul will be going to stud in New Zealand. He's a top chance from the United States. A number of Japanese entrants, 6 in fact, including 2 and 3. Then the West Germany entrant Dwan, Golden Ivory from Britain, St Hilarion, who has a big reputation from Britain, the Filbert number 8 from New Zealand, Alidar's Best, who's by the great Alidar, who ran second to Affirmed in all those big races in the United States at the end of the 70s, Ballatu from France, Spirit of Kingston, let's hope the number 13 isn't unlucky, and the pre-race favourite is Symboli Rudolph from Japan. Prize money, $1.1 million. First prize, about $577,000. It's raining at the moment in Tokyo. The race will run late. The horses are on their way to the barrier, and we'll be joining Philip Leishman and Keith Hobb in just a moment. Moment for the running of the 1985 Japan Cup. As we said, Spirit of Kingston and the Filbert. Last year, of course, 3 representatives from Australasia. Strawberry Road, who'd been doing a lot of international travel by this stage. Also Bounty Hawk and Kiwi. They all missed a place, but we've got our fingers crossed that the Filbert or Spirit of Kingston can finish in the top 3. The Japanese won't hear of Symboli Rudolph being beaten. Spirit of Kingston about a 30-to-1 chance, and the Filbert at 40-to-1. Let's go to Tokyo and join our host, Philip Leishman.
Goodness gracious, for a few minutes there, Keith, I thought he was going to do it.
I did, I really did. At the 200 metres, when he levelled up on the inside, I jumped off my chair and really started to go, but we were flat to the boards the last little bit. But I do feel for the owners of the Filbert. They're here today. There's 3 partners and their wives all here in Japan, and some of those along with that group there, the Australians, some 44, and groups from New Zealand. But the 3 owners here with their wives, and I bet their pulses are just pounding at the moment. Well, back in the shed in there, Symboli Rudolph with his pink cap. He races in the green, the Filbert just behind him, and see the hundreds of or thousands of umbrellas here, and it's just a shade that this rain just might mar the race itself. So down at the start, where they have possibly the best starting system, I think, that I've seen anywhere in the world. They have virtually will have manpower here, and they take the horses in odd numbers and in lots of 2, and the starter calls them in with 1 minute to go, and the moment the last horse is in, he pulls the trigger, and we've seen some giant starts here in Japan. So Symboli Rudolph, the Japanese favourite, when he went out onto the track, there was a huge roar from the some 100-odd thousand people here today, and they've really put their money where their mouth is with this horse. They've made him very, very short on the tote. He opened after 2 hours of betting yesterday at $1.40 only, and he's down to $2.10 at this stage. But $1.40 for his money. This is on course here, Symboli Rudolph.
I can see Tokyo hasn't had an effect on you, Keith, yet. 210 yen it was, actually. 210 yen he is at the moment. But that's pretty short, all the same. So Symboli Rudolph, a warm favourite. Spirit of Kingston, as I mentioned, at odds of around about 77-to-1. Goodness me. The Filbert at 37-to-1. The best of the others, I think, perhaps Golden Ivory, who was at around about 13s. So the horses in the hut, so to speak, and it won't be too long before they emerge from there, and we can get another look at them. They are a classy bunch overall. Nassapur, who is from the United States, is destined to travel to New Zealand next year and will stand in New Zealand at the Redart Stud, and quite a coup, I think, to have got this horse. The sale was instigated before the horse raced in the Rothmans International, which is Canada's biggest race, and Nassapur won on that day. Steve DeMoro is a New Yorker. He is the trainer, and he said only a matter of minutes ago that he expects the horse to go a very good race, and conditions will not worry him at all. Although at his last start he only finished 8th on a rain-affected track, but apparently that was quite slushy on that occasion.
Some very classy horses here this year, Phil, and talking stallion-wise, I'd love to grab hold of either St. Hilarion or Golden Glory. They're both typically English classic horses. There's the big screen that you see out in front here, and by gee, it's good. You can pick them up. You could actually call a race virtually off it rather than use binoculars. But those two horses in particular are very, very nice types of horses, and I think that they're pretty confident. In fact, the English form has not been that good in the race, Phil.
The English performances have been extremely ordinary, I suppose, Keith, but I think their best chance this year, without doubt, with Gold and Ivory and also St. Hilarion. And it's a real pleasure at this stage to welcome viewers to the 10 network throughout Australia. Bruce McAvaney there, directing operations, I think. A pleasure to have you here in Tokyo, our Australian viewers. Conditions are not really the best, I'm afraid to say. Rain has been falling throughout the day, and as a result, the track is definitely rain-affected. Probably hard to say whether it would be classed as soft, but it must be getting a little closer. Spirit of Kingston, for your information, is at odds of 77 to 1 here on the local tote, while the Filbert, New Zealand's representative, is a little shorter at 37 to 1. Joining me for comments today is Keith Hobb, and Keith, not too far away now. We have a delay here, by the way, but not too far away before a start in the Japan Cup.
Well, for Australians, they may wonder what's going on here, but as your horses go straight to the post and virtually have no longer than 5 minutes at the post, in Japan, the horses go out, and they're out at the, well, anywhere on the track, and virtually at this stage over in the little shed, but they do go out and they spend a good quarter of an hour at the before starting. And the other thing is that the jockeys are not allowed to get off at any stage.
So the horses now leaving that area to make their way towards the start point as we look at some of the starters. And here is the warm favourite, Simboli Rudolph, a horse who's won 11 of his 13 starts, was beaten in last year's Japan Cup when he could finish only 3rd. He is hot property in this country. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Well, I think possibly those jockeys will be very pleased that we've actually got a shed here to hide in on the way. We've got nothing like that in Australasia. There he is, Golden Ivory, a beautiful horse racing in the shadow blind, ridden by Pat Edery as he goes up alongside the Japanese horse Rocky Tiger. There's Dawn, St. Hilarion racing in the orange colours with Greville Starkey aboard. They're just cantering very, very quietly and nicely relaxed going to the start. He's the winner of his last 3 starts. He raced in Italy. Certainly the form there is not world class. And there's the New Zealand contender, along with the Australian horse, the Filbert, and Spirit of Kingston, and the 2 Garys, Gary Phillips and Gary Willits, just having a chat as they trot down towards the start of the race, which is 2,400 metres, halfway up the straight.
Gary Willits rode in the invited jockeys race yesterday, finished in 2nd place. And the crowd responded enthusiastically to his performance. Gary Willits, a great jockey. They were very, very impressed indeed, and I think Gary was quite overcome by the atmosphere. Well, there's lots of shots of this fellow, Simboli Rudolph. I suppose that is understandable. Yukio Okabe is one of their most experienced jockeys, and he will guide the horse. It won't be too long before we get them underway. They're very, very efficient at dispatching fields here in Tokyo.
The big question's been all week here at press conferences and whatever, Phil, is just what's going to be the pacemaker. Nobody's opened their mouths at this stage, and of course you can remember in the last 2 years that we've had really tearaway pacemakers getting out by 10 and some 15 lengths at stages. So it'll be very interesting just to see who leads here today.
$10 Japan Cup. As Philip Leishman told us, Spirit of Kingston at big odds and the Filbert 37 to 1, but not as long as Spirit of Kingston, some 77 to 1 on the Japanese tote. Let's go back to Tokyo for the Japan Cup.
Spirit of Kingston. I'm not going to take her on at a name. She's a beautiful horse, and she does look very, very well. Connections have been very well pleased with her since she's been here. Her form in Australia wasn't good, but Bob Hoisted and Gary Willits are very, very pleased. She worked very well the other morning. The Filbert, there he is. He had a little problem with colic earlier last week. It was on Friday off. He lost a little weight, but he looks in particularly good condition now. In fact, I think he looks very much like at his time when he won the Air New Zealand. They keep going back to Simbali Rudolph. They obviously love him, Phil.
Well, I suppose when you're hot property, you're the subject. He does look very relaxed. There's no doubt about it. He'll run a big race today. Alidar's Best is number 9, just moving around there in the back. Here is Nemain. This is the horse that Christy Roach, who's one of the top jockeys in Ireland. He will ride Nemain, an out-and-out plotter, given a chance if the pace is on.
The starter about to call them up, Phil, and as I said earlier in the program, they don't mess around here. The 1-minute call, they come up in odd numbers and lots of 2. And the moment they stand, then they don't stand any nonsense at all. They just let them go. Spirit of Kingston.
One of the attendants there is an Australian lady who's been up here with the horse. They are allowed to go to the start to obviously help settle the horse down. As number 4 Dawn goes around, followed by number 1 Nassapur. Now this is the American horse representing the United States, Simbali Rudolph. Right in the middle of the picture there is the Filbert, and let's hope he can go a good race. New Zealand performances in this race have been pretty good over the years, and I think this fellow might even go one better. Alidar's Best there, Filbert. There is Nassapur. He'll be ridden by a French jockey who's based in New York called Jean-Luc Samin. And a sea of umbrellas will give you an indication of what the conditions are like. A little airy here at Tokyo Racecourse after beautiful weather yesterday. Spirit of Kingston parading, and she really looks well. Bob Hoisted was absolutely thrilled. So too Gary Willits with the performance on Thursday at the track. She turned in a blistering gallop, and it really brought her into contention. I think Bob, however, feels that she's probably in need of a little more racing. He was worried that the 2,000 metre distance would have been ideal, and not 2,400 metres as she'll get today. Alidar's Best at the moment, having some attention paid to it.
Willie Carson, the rider, Philip, and 3 times rider in this race, so he should know his way around. And in fact, he's been placed, but not lucky enough to win one as yet. Willie has not ridden Alidar's Best before, but just flew in the other night and rates the filly very, very highly. The Filbert, the only gelding in the race, which is rather unusual. Gary Phillips aboard. And I think he'll love the track conditions. He's, as I said, he raced in this time last year at Sandown and Caulfield and won races with the Sting out. This is a sandy track, and they're going to get a little bit coming back at them here today on this track. And I would say, to describe the track on New Zealand conditions, I would say possibly we would call it soft, and in Australia, slow.
So Alidar's Best appears to be all right now, and she is about to go forward. She's a 3-year-old filly, very highly regarded. Was originally raced by, or trained, shall I say, by David O'Brien, the son of the legendary Vincent O'Brien, and he suggested that the wetter tracks in Europe weren't to her liking, and she would be better suited by going to America, where she got firmer surfaces. Now, in fact, she must obviously be somewhat ruled out, if that is the policy with the filly, because she obviously doesn't like the wetter surface. They can't leave this fellow alone, because he is just so big here in Japan. Simbali Rudolph.
Well, they've taken Gallop Diner to the stalls, Philip, and the rest of them now within a few yards behind. They have another rather unique trick here. They have a big yellow tape held by about 10 or 12 Japanese, and as the horses walk towards the stalls, they come in with this tape, and it's very, very good when horses break away as they move on the horse, and they've got no chance of careering about the track. There's Golden Ivory taking up its spot, so we're just about set to go. The 1985 Japan Cup. So, right, well, with about 6 horses to come in now, and we join Radio New Zealand as well. just before the 1985 Japan Cup. A slight delay here with a horse breaking away at the start in the previous race, and the conditions here are overcast. We've had showers from early this morning, and the track are described here as slow or easy.
So a quick dispatch now as these horses line up for a start in the 1985 Japan Cup, the 5th running of the race. Last year it was Katsuragi Ace from Japan who led them all the way, caused a major boil over. We're not too sure whether there's another Katsuragi Ace in the field, but there are some good horses. St. Hilarion, he has to be into contention.
Only 5 horses to come up now. Phil Nemain walks around behind the French Stayer, the horse that's raced over and won over 2.5 miles. I think they would be hoping that it was that big a race today. There's the favourite Simboli Rudolph as they are about set to go, and one of the horses out the back is St. Hilarion, the English Hope, and that's called to its door now. So the last one to come up will be Nemain, a big brown staying horse. The Filbert has taken up his place, drawn midfield. Spirit of Kingston is drawn rather wide, 3 from the outside, and they're racing now in the Japan Cup of 85. The Filbert bounded away and racing to lead them. It looks like it's Windsor-Not, the Japanese horse, that's going to take the lead, although racing up wide on the track we have Yamano Sharagwa. Now racing up with the 2 of them is Golden Ivory as they go to the post. Now a round to go, and Windsor-Not, the pacemaker from Golden Ivory, right there in 3rd place now as they work out of the straight Yamano Shiragiku. Then followed about 1.5 lengths to on the inside Sakaru Sunio. Then racing round wide is Belly 2. Then on the very outside of the track now the Japanese Hope. Simboli Rudolph's being forced 4 and 5 wide as they work out now by about the 1,800 metres. The Filbert's tucked in, 1 out from the rails now, about 5 lengths off the leaders. Then followed St. Hilarion trailing him. Then followed round by Nemain about 1.5 lengths back to Dawn, about 1 length back. Then Elidar's Best. Well back towards the rear now Gallop Diner, and alongside of it then is Spirit of Kingston. And last of all Nassapur with Rocky Tiger in 2nd last place. 15 lengths cover them as they work over towards the 1,400 metres, and it's Windsor-Not, the pacemaker. Edary's taken Golden Ivory up to have him on, and they slip away 4 lengths now from Ballad 2 in 3rd place. On the inside next is Yamano, then followed about 1.5 lengths back is Sakaru Sunio. On the outside of these, Nemain trying to poke forward with the Filbert in between those 2 horses, appears to be travelling well. Then St. Hilarion on the inside next, then out wide on the track Simboli Rudolph. The Japanese champ, he's been wide throughout as they work over with about 1,000 metres to go now. About a half length away, Spirit of Kingston's off the rails from Elidar's Best. There's Gallop Diner working round wide, about 1.5 lengths back to Rocky Tiger, and Nassapur gradually at the rear, about 2.5 lengths last as the pace goes on as they work towards the 800 metres. So Golden Ivory, Belly 2 of the 2 as they work to that point. There's Nemain's got very, very handy, the Irish horse. Windsor-Not's in between that lot, then about 3 lengths behind them. The Filbert trying to poke forward from on the inside next, then is St. Hilarion as they come to the turn, and Simboli Rudolph has worked round very wide, and he's about 4 lengths off the leaders. They're into the straight, the business end now, and it's Golden Glory, the leader, from on the outside of him there, Windsor-Not. The Filbert's coming at them at the 300 metres now, and down the outside here we've got a big run. Simboli Rudolph, he's made the lead now, the Japanese horse. Simboli Rudolph, here's the Filbert coming at him hard on the inside, the Kiwi. They're down to it with Rocky Tiger coming into it late, and the Simboli Rudolph, here's the Filbert trying to pull him back. On the outside of the lot is Rocky Tiger, but it's Simboli Rudolph, he's too good, 100 metres to go. Rocky Tiger and the Filbert are fighting out for the minor money, and it's Simboli Rudolph wins the Japan Cup. 2nd home Rocky Tiger, 3rd at the line the Filbert, a big race. Elidar's Best was 4th. They were followed home behind it then. On the inside was Dawn, the German horse, then followed home Nassapur. Then Gallop Diner was the next one home. Then some dismal failures here. St. Hilarion was next. Alongside of it then was Sakuro Sunio. Well back towards the rear was Nassapur. Alongside of it Golden Glory gave in a long way out. Belly 2 didn't stay, and then well back as well is Windsor-Not and Spirit of Kingston in the last 2 or 3. So Philip, we have it now on the replay as they get to the 200 metres, and Simboli Rudolph with his pink cap, he got his way to the lead. It was a big run. He's been 5 wide throughout. The Filbert trying very, very hard on the inside to try and grab him, and Rocky Tiger. So the Japanese have filled the first 2 places in the Japan Cup. Simboli Rudolph, a beautiful big...
And what a great horse he is. 14 starts, 12 wins, 3rd last year, 1st this year. So it's 15 Simboli Rudolph 1st, 2nd 12 Rocky Tiger, both from Japan, and a great run by the Filbert from New Zealand in 3rd placing. Bad luck that Spirit of Kingston didn't improve a lot today, and she finished well back. Conditions I don't think would have suited her. We're running late. That's it for the Japan Cup. Join us in Eyewitness News throughout Australia for further highlights of the race, and check your TAB dividends tomorrow. Thanks very much for joining us for one of the great events in racing, the 1985 Japan Cup.